All right, just amazing the impact this is having on so many people within the country. Consumers aren't the only ones worried about the fiscal cliff. Despite a series of meetings behind closed doors, Wall Street and small businesses are also bracing for uncertainty as well. Patrick Reis is a financial reporter for Politico, and he explains what's causing the political wrangling behind the scenes.
I think with this side, where both sides at the end of the year are set to give up something that they really cherish, there might be incentives to actually get the long-term deal in place.
Has Wall Street and market expectations changed over the past month?
People seem to be getting a little skittish on Wall Street. Business leaders came to Washington this week with a different message they've been bringing all along. They too had been fighting hard on not increasing taxes or tax rates. But in the last week they said, look, we're willing to concede on that point. Just get us a deal, get it done, let us know what to expect in the next year. And having a firm expectation has seemed to supplant for them any specific deal. They just want to know what their taxes are going to look like and what spending policy is going to look like.
Could you help explain? There's some folks that are asking, number one, why is it so difficult to get a deal done? It sounds like a simple question, but it's not getting done. And also, why do we always have to wait until there's this deadline that we're up against? Why wasn't this discussed possibly earlier to avoid this deadline situation that we have now with the clock?
Well, to your first question, why it's so difficult to get a deal done, I think you have to look at the last three elections in the United States. In 2008, voters picked a sort of left-leaning crowd. They picked some moderate to liberal Democrats. They picked a moderate Democrat in Barack Obama to head the White House. Then in 2010, voters went in the complete opposite direction. And they picked a series of hardline Republican congressmen who promised no tax increases under any circumstances and have so far delivered on that promise for voters. So voters have sort of picked two different bodies in two consecutive elections that want to take the government in completely different directions. When that happens, you're unlikely to see a lot of compromise and deal brokering getting made.
The ABC Washington Post poll shows that when asked of people whether they approve or disapprove of how they've handled the fiscal cliff, President Obama gets 49% voting yes. John Boehner and the Republicans get a 25%. I guess my question is, are you hearing anything behind the scenes negotiations that might give us some insights as to if they're closer together than we think?
Well, I think, behind the scenes you can see that there's a Republican acknowledgement that given the way the elections went, they're going to have to back off on one of their key positions. They had previously said no revenue raises whatsoever. They said they wanted a deal that was exclusively spending cuts. That fell apart last summer, and sort of everyone took a deep breath and said, okay, we'll wait for the voters to weigh in. Now the voters have weighed in. Republicans have lost seats in the House. Barack Obama is back in the White House. And I think now Republicans see that their position is slightly weakened. So right now what they're fighting against is an increase in tax rates, but they've sort of privately conceded, and I imagine are behind the scenes negotiating, a deal in which they allow for some new tax revenue to come in, just not through raising rates. That might mean eliminating certain deductions, limiting certain deductions, but their sort of golden goose now is to not allow that tax rate to go up, particularly in the highest tax bracket.
So bottom line, they're still far apart.
They're certainly far apart, but it's not as far apart as they were in 2010.
Let's go to the economy. The Fed, in its recent message from Ben Bernanke, the chairman there, says the unemployment rate will remain elevated to 2015. He also gave some statistics regarding inflation and some other issues. Does that sort of, I won't say gloomy, but very meek outlook, if you will, does that put additional pressure on both sides to possibly get a deal done because they don't want to have a more adverse effect on the economy?
Certainly. I think if Bernanke were to come out and say, hey, look, great times are coming whether you take action or not, that would change the situation. But what he's saying is, in fact, just the opposite. He's saying, look, we have a fragile recovery right now. And today, beyond his policy at a press conference, he went out and specifically said, if we go over this cliff, even briefly, even if we just go over it and then come back, we're going to see real economic damage. He said that the uncertainty already is hurting the economy. And so, Bernanke has become not the cheerleader for any specific deal, but he has been begging Congress and the White House for 9 months now to get a deal in place.